guys, it's Julia. Welcome back to my channel. So today's video, it's been a long time since I've done one of these, but today's video is going to be a new makeup releases, favorites, and fails. If you're new here, basically this is a series where I go through all the new makeup releases I've been trying out recently and just review them all in one big review video. It's a lot. And today we have a lot of things to go through. It's pretty much all eyeshadow palettes, I'm sorry. I haven't tried like a new foundation or anything since February, and it's pretty much just been eyeshadow that I've been trying. And it's been like a lot of Colourpop collections. So we have a lot of exciting things to go through today, a lot of hits and misses. Today I'm sipping on, if you've been watching my IG Stories series, current number 2 favorite, Celsius Peach Vibe. Today's dew fairy of the day is Maluji's Loves. Thank you so much for having your bell on. But before we get into all the new releases, I want to take a second to thank the sponsor of today's video, which is ShopTagger. So here's what my current wishlist is looking like at the moment, but I use ShopTagger whenever I'm online shopping for anything to both create wishlists and also get discounts and the lowest price possible on everything. ShopTagger is an online browser extension that you can really easily add on to Google Chrome. It basically just adds a little button onto your browser, so whenever you're shopping, you can click the button and it automatically saves whatever item you're looking at onto a wish list for later. Once it's on your wish list, ShopTagger will notify you whenever it comes back in stock or whenever it drops in price, especially when I'm shopping on websites, particularly like LV, where stuff is always out of stock. Instead of like wasting my time every morning by checking the webpage every day, I can just wait for ShopTagger to notify me when it comes back in stock, and it's so much easier. Plus, ShopTagger now has a cashback extension and a coupon extension, so whenever you're in checkout, ShopTagger automatically tries a bunch of different coupon codes for you and finds you the best deal possible. So I always use this, especially when I'm shopping for clothes or anything, and I generally save like 20% on every purchase from that. It's completely free to download and have an account, and it just makes online shopping and saving things to a wish list so much easier. ShopTagger's also been a really huge part in helping me like buy less makeup on my own, because I can save things to a wish list, and that way while I have it on the wish list I can kind of stew over it, and a lot of the time the kind of new releases hype dies down for me and I'm able to kind of take it off the wish list without really like feeling like I still need to buy it. So I'm planning on talking about that in a video soon, actually, about how I kind of stopped buying makeup so much and how I've been on a low buy for the entire year, but this has been one of the biggest factors in that. So you can use my link down below to try out ShopTagger. It's seriously changed the way that I online shop. And that is all I have to say, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and without further ado, let's get into it. Oh wow, you guys just witnessed me like having an aneurysm or something. Alright, I'm going to start off with probably the most requested thing that I had to review, which was the Oden's Eye new Alva 2 collection. This was a huge release for them. I've known about this collection for the past 2 months or so, but I got to see the palettes and like what they look like on the inside for the first time when it was released on social media, so I was just as excited as everyone else. I love that they came out with 3 mini palettes in addition to a bigger palette with a kind of consolidated color scheme, and I think they really carried through the brand's aesthetic into all the products as always. So the biggest thing in the collection is the Alva 2 eyeshadow palette, which is 16 pans, very colorful, vibrant color scheme. So the Alva 1, this is a little bit more on the kind of pinky tone neutral side with some pops of yellow. I've always said that this kind of reminds me of the Sailor Moon palette, but like better. And I love this one. It can do colorful looks as well as very nice neutral looks, and I've done both of those on my channel. But this is just straight up brights, and I haven't tried like vibrant shades like this besides I guess the lilac in the Soul Mane palette. So I was a little bit nervous about it, but I had a good feeling just because I know I like their formula a lot. And then there are 3 smaller mini palettes as well. We have the mini Sky palette, which is kind of a purple color scheme. This one I'm actually going to be popping into a giveaway pretty soon, just because I feel like I don't really need these types of colors that much in my collection, especially with what I already have from Oden's Eye, but I do think it's beautiful. There's the mini Ocean palette, which I opened, I was like, this one's going to be my favorite of the 3. Very cool toned aquatic color scheme with some really beautiful metallics, but then I opened this one and I was like, I know this one's going to be my favorite. So this is the mini Forest palette. I love her so much. Gorgeous mix of kind of neutrals and bright blues as well. And then last in the collection, there's a new Alva 2 highlighter palette. So it's in the same layout as the Soul Mane highlighter palette, but they went with really unique blue tones for these highlighters. I'm not sure if it's picking up really well on camera, but Salamander is this really unique kind of like duochrome, almost rainbow flecked shade. Like this, like I don't have anything like this. It's not something I would wear on my cheekbones necessarily, but I love this on the inner corner and then on the eyelid as well. There's a blue tone shade, a kind of goldish duochrome shade. I thought it was going to be more neutral, but it definitely is a little bit more on the yellow duochrome side. And then Sylphs down here has a little silver butterfly in it, but the base color is this kind of like blue toned, a little bit more of a neutral duochrome flip, if that makes sense. I guess because I'm holding it, I'll just review the highlighter palette first. This overall I think is beautiful. I love this shade here. Like, this is unlike anything I have in my collection, and I'm definitely going to be using this all the time on my eyelids, especially with like more neutral eyeshadows. I think this can give a really fun like pop of color in a way that's subtle. I personally don't like colorful highlighters on myself, so for me this is not really a highlighter palette that I would use on my cheekbones. I don't know if I would have bought it just because I wouldn't be really using these 3 shades, but for me Salamander is just such a unique shade. I would love to see them do a single pan with this. Outer packaging wise, as always, I think that they do a great job with their packaging, and this collection in particular, I think the Soul Main palette was a little bit more folksy, whereas this is just like straight up ocean goddess shit, and I love it. But they really carry through the details in even like the sleeves of their palettes. I would recommend it to people who do like colorful highlighters. I will be using Salamander quite frequently, but it's not something I would have bought for myself. Onto the palettes though, something I noticed while I was working with them is that honestly, I don't think that you need to get the big palette if you're getting the mini palettes, and vice versa. There are, in my opinion, a couple overlapping shades between especially these 2 palettes, so the Forest and the Ocean mini palettes, and the bigger palette. Like, do you see what I kind of mean? I'm not saying that the shades are necessarily exactly overlapping, but like kind of similar vibes. Still though, I think that coming out with the mini palettes was a good idea. So far of all the palettes I've tried from Oden's Eye, the formulas are very consistent between even like the smaller pan palettes like this, where the pans are a little bit tinier, whereas the Soul Main palette has a little bit bigger of an eyeshadow pan, and sometimes that can mean different formulas between palettes. I feel like formula is very consistent between each of their eyeshadow palettes, which is always good in terms of being able to depend on a brand. I was very pleased with how these very colorful, very vibrant mattes performed. I was worried especially about the kind of like Tiffany blue and like lighter blue shades in here, as well as this kind of green. These are harder shades to formulate, but I think they did a great job and they showed up really nicely in the eye look I did. I do want to note that these 2 are pressed glitters. The reason I wasn't really sure is because Oden's Eye does have like these kind of softer shimmer shades like this blue bubble shade here, as well as some really like foiled metallic shades. So you can see this kind of shade in the middle, the split pan, is a little bit different of a shimmer formula from like this brown shade down here. So in the product shots, I thought that these could maybe be like textured shimmers, which I'd be really excited about, but they are pressed glitters. I use the shade Pop Rocks in the eye look that I posted on Instagram, and I also use Pink Star in a different eye look, and they didn't irritate my eyes at all, but I know some people don't like pressed glitters in their palettes, so keep that in mind. There are pressed glitters in here, but not in the mini palettes. The shimmers in here are beautiful though, especially the shade here called Deep Sea. Can we yeah, pure money. Honestly, I would have liked to see this shade kind of replicated in the mini Ocean palette, because the blue shade in here, while gorgeous, isn't quite as impactful as this one. They're different tones, but this shimmer and this like kind of metallic finish is so beautiful, whereas this is a little bit softer. I do love the looks that I got out of this one, and I think there's a lot of different things you can do in here. It's a very diverse color scheme, but like looking at it doesn't make me confused or anything. I think it's laid out in a way that makes sense. When it comes to the smaller palettes, as I mentioned, I do think that there is some overlap between these smaller palettes and the color scheme of the bigger one, particularly within these 2, but I'll just talk about the formula. Again, very consistent formula between the Oden's Eye eyeshadow palettes. I would say Forest is the one that's most different and probably my favorite of the 3, just because you get, first of all, this beautiful like teal metallic shade here that has this kind of duochrome. Sorry. I normally don't love split pans, but honestly, I kind of dig it here. Aesthetically, I think it's laid out in a way that makes sense. And honestly, I think the split pan shades are the best in the palettes in terms of formula. Like, these finishes are I don't know if you, yeah. Okay, so Forest is my favorite of the mini palettes. I would say Ocean comes in a close second, particularly for the shade here called Jellyfish. So Blue Star and Jellyfish are next to each other. I think Blue Star is kind of similar to the shade that I just swatched from the Forest palette. Jellyfish, let me just, like, such an interesting shade. It's kind of like purple, but also pink, but also clear, but also silver. So it's like Ritz, but purple. It's kind of like an amped up version of Ritz, if you know what you know. But this is gorgeous as well, and I think the split pan here really works. And then for the Sky palette, I think the split pan here is my least favorite, just because, I don't know, these 2 shades next to each other don't do it for me. But there is a shade in here called Dew, and I feel like they named it after me. So overall, thoughts on the collection, they killed it. Formula-wise, beautiful. Packaging-wise, I just think the small details are insane. Just show such a level of attention to detail and the care that they put into their products. My favorite thing out of this collection are the really beautiful duochrome metallics, particularly this Forest palette. But yeah, that is the Oden's Eye Alva 2 collection. You'll probably see a lot of looks coming soon with this. I haven't had a chance to post most of them, but I've been playing with this collection a lot. It's a very fun time. Next up, I want to talk about the palette that I'm wearing on my eyes right now. So for full transparency's sake, the post that I did with this palette on Instagram was a sponsored post. So that earlier post with them was sponsored, but Coastal Scents still did add asked me to just kind of give my unfiltered thoughts about the palette in general, so I want to review it on here. My camera just decided to die for 5 minutes and I didn't notice, so here I am again. Anyways, I believe I was talking about the Coastal Scents Rebel palette when it cut out, so we'll see. I'm so sorry, editing Julia.
Imagine how tired we are. Imagine how tired we are of it.
But yeah, I just wanted to give this a review because I feel like it's been a long time since Coastal Scents has done a new palette. I was honestly very impressed with this. I think that Coastal Scents' eyeshadow formula is pretty underrated, especially in their revealed line. I wouldn't say it's too different from the single shadows that they offer, but this formula is just a tiny bit smoother than their singles in my opinion. So the look that I posted on Instagram with this one in the sponsored post that I did with them was kind of like a sunset look using some of these kind of brighter matte shades up here, and it was an all matte look. Personally, I do think that the matte formula is just a hair better than the shimmers, just because these are kind of softer shimmers than what I normally go for. You guys know that if I'm going to go for a colorful shimmer, I want them to be really foiled and high impact, whereas these are just a tiny bit softer. But if you do enjoy that with shimmers, I think you'll enjoy these. But the mattes, especially colorful mattes from a more affordable brand, is what I really look for. And I would say that this is the best option if you're wanting a really good rainbow palette under $20. So I kind of recreated the look that I did on Instagram for today's video, using those shades on the top part of my eyes, but then I used some of the rainbow shades on the bottom part of my eyes as well. Really, the only shades not represented in this look are these kind of the black and brown over here. I'll flash some swatches on screen so you guys can see how this one looks, and I'll flash some swatches on a darker skin tone as well so you guys can see. But overall, I really enjoy this palette, and this is my recommendation if you're wanting brights underneath $20. It doesn't necessarily eclipse my James Charles palette, but it's a lot more affordable than that. And then next up, disgusting! This is the Pat McGrath Dark Star Mascara, and I have no excuses for myself. I've actually seen quite a few reviews going around of this mascara, mostly just people interrogating whether or not it's worth it. And overall, I would say that I pretty much agree with the general consensus, which is that it's a really, really good mascara, but it's really expensive. I use this one on camera in the Get Ready With Me anti-haul video, but this is the mascara I've been using recently. I try and only have like one big mascara or one full-size mascara open at a time. And this one, the first time I used it, I was intrigued because the brush size and the brush shape reminds me very much of the Too Faced Born This Way. Or no, Better Than Sex. I'm sorry, I just forget the name of mediocre products. This shape reminds me a lot of the Too Faced Better Than Sex, which I did love that brush shape a lot, but the problem was the formula for me. It just flaked a lot. This, however, I have not had any problems with the formula, which I hate to say. I've been wearing this one to work. We've been having 100-degree weather and like super bad humidity recently. So even though it's like the clinic is indoors, I still go outside. I still have to like go between buildings sometimes, and I sweat a lot. So this has been put to the test, and I haven't had any smudging incidents recently. I feel like this looks exactly like the Too Faced Better Than Sex mascara on application, and it does hold my lashes in a curl for much longer. And I've been trying to like not wear falsies in real life as much. I stopped liking how my eyes looked without false lashes, and I think that was like really bad for me because I didn't feel pretty on days when I was just around the house not wearing any makeup and not wearing lashes. I forgot like what my natural eyes and what my face looked like. So I've been trying to like deprogram myself from wearing false lashes and just being comfortable with wearing mascara, and things like this that give me a lot of volume and keep my lashes like upright have been really helpful for that. I do love this formula. I will relish it while it's here, and I will probably miss it while it's gone. Honestly, I don't know if I'm gonna repurchase it. Like if I miss it enough, I'll go ahead and splurge on it, but honestly, I don't want to spend money on mascara like this. I'm still waiting to repurchase Essence Lash Princess because that's like my reigning favorite, and I know that I love that one, but I have a bunch of other mascaras I have to try out. So, but right now I'm enjoying it. I'm sure it's probably going to be available as like a points perk at some point, maybe, hopefully, or maybe they'll come out with like a smaller size. Then I would recommend getting it, but overall it's a lot of money, but it's good. And if you like the way that the Too Faced mascara looks on your lashes, but you don't like how it wears, this could be a good option, but it's not a dupe because it's like astronomically more expensive. Okay, next up on my list is all the Colourpop stuff. So for the things I already did a full review video on, I'll just kind of like briefly recap the thoughts. If you've watched the review videos, you know that I didn't have like strong feelings about any of the collections, but the one thing that I didn't do a review video on, I actually really love. So, introducing the Colourpop Sunflower Palette, or the Little Ray of Sunshine. This is another one of their 9 pans. I love that they're doing the 9 pans in cardboard packaging now. That's like the one thing I didn't like about their monochromatic palettes, is that it was in plastic stuff. The Blush Crush palette that they did earlier this year, as well as this, are in the same like format and formula as a monochromatic, but in cardboard packaging. Anyways, this, so good. All matte shades, which Colourpop does not do a lot of. No mattes with micro glitters. Bless up. And it's yellow toned neutrals. Girl. I got asked to compare this to a couple different things. First, obviously the Naked Honey, which is my go-to for kind of yellow tone neutrals. The Honey palette, which obviously not like a super similar color scheme, but it's Colourpop's other yellow palette, so I did want to compare. And then the Gemini palette as well, which I think is probably like the least similar thing. I would say that this is probably the closest in terms of vibes to the Naked Honey palette. Obviously with Naked Honey you do get some shimmers in here, whereas this is all mattes, but I think that this is the best palette that Colourpop has come out with in a long time. Might be my new favorite Colourpop palette besides the I Love Sadahi Through My Eyes palette. That one I love for the versatility and the shimmers that you get in there, but this, if you're wanting solid, really good quality matte shadows. And honestly, if you cover up these three kind of more yellow tone shades, it's a really good like basic neutrals palette, so you can do some really nice soft glams that aren't yellow toned at all. But then you have these kind of like fun mustardy shades in here as well that you can play around with. So I honestly don't think it's super similar to the Honey palette. I think this is a lot more on the bright tone side, whereas this is a little bit more toned down. And then in terms of how it compares to Gemini, honestly I don't think it does very much. Gemini does have these kind of mustardy tone neutrals, but I do think that this is a little bit more on the brighter yellow tone side, whereas this is more grungy. But yeah, formula wise, I think that this is the best thing that Colourpop has done in a long time. And yeah, was not expecting to like this as much as I did, but I have a feeling that this is going to end up in quite possibly the yearly favorites videos. A little bit annoyed that it came on the heels of so many other prominent releases, so I feel like this is gonna fly under the radar, but honestly best thing that they've come out with in a long time. And just to briefly recap my thoughts on the other like more prominent collections that they came out with, the Candyland collection honestly hasn't had a ton of longevity for me, but I did want to show you guys what I did with my Candy Castle palette, because in my review video I mentioned that I love the packaging of this one and the kind of compact size of it, so I was gonna save some of the shades I did like from the palette and then kind of gut some of my other Colourpop palettes because they are all magnetic, and then kind of create my own custom Candy Castle palette. So this is what I've done with my Candy Castle palette. It's significantly more neutral and a lot less like pastel chalky tones. I did keep enough shades in here so that it still has that vanilla cake batter scent that I liked, but I took some shades mostly from Sweet Talk, so this is one of the shades from Sweet Talk that I love very much, as well as like I think 1 or 2 shades from Garden Variety, and basically made my own perfect little Candy Castle palette. So kind of like peachy pinky tone neutrals with a twist, and yeah, I really like how this turned out. So this is my new customized Candy Castle palette. So I have been using the Candy Castle palette, but not really, because it's different now. The biggest thing I've been using from the Candyland collection has been the Super Shock blush, particularly Gummy More. It's lovely. I really enjoy the formula of these Super Shocks. Just a nice kind of classic strawberry pink toned blush. But I don't think it's particularly unique, so if you don't need any new blushes, I wouldn't say you need to go ahead and get this. But I have been loving it, and I think the Super Shock formula for blushes is very underrated. The Garden Variety collection, I have kind of eviscerated my palette, and honestly, I don't think I'm going to be keeping this around for very long. I do love the packaging of this, but I don't need this color scheme very much. I just think I have a lot of other shades like this, so this is probably going to be decluttered at some point, probably to a friend. But I have been using very much the pressed powder blush from the collection. So Whole 9 Yards, I believe I mentioned this in my blush, bronzer, and highlighter video, but she is beautiful. I'm wearing her on my cheeks right now today. I do think that this is probably the best thing from the collection makeup-wise. You guys know how I feel about the scrunchies. We're not going to get into it again because I almost died in that video. Who is texting me? Alright, this I anti-hauled, so I would like it to be known I did not buy this, but my mom, for whatever reason, has an affinity for buying naked palettes, and she bought this one, and I'm quarantined with her right now, so I saw it in the bathroom and I was like, hey, do you mind if I like try that out a couple times and share a review? So she let me borrow her Naked Ultraviolet palette, and I have thoughts. First of all, the packaging. Urban Decay like consistently goes off with their Naked palette packaging, so Naked Honey, we know, gold bar. Even like Naked Heat, sturdy packaging, really beautiful details, but like this has no right being as beautiful as it is. I love this. Like that is so pretty. I don't think that the pictures do it justice. I think it looks so much uglier in the pictures than it does in person. This is actually a really gorgeous palette in person. This does have the problem that most of the other Naked palettes, with the exception of Naked Honey and Naked Heat, have, in that it's pretty much matte free. There are 3 matte shades in here: Mind Slip, Hacked, and Optimized, and they're all very like pale shades. In that respect, I think that Urban Decay kind of took the easy way out, in that they avoided making a really bad formula for this palette by not making any challenging shades to formulate. Generally, purple palettes flop because purples are really hard to formulate, but all the purples in here, except for this one shade here, are shimmers. So all the purple shades in here perform nicely, but you don't have any like purple matte shades in here except for this kind of like dusty lavender shade. I don't love the kind of duochrome minty green shade here called Lucid. I think that this is barely there in terms of duochrome flip. It's very subtle. Overall, besides like Lucid, I don't think that the shades perform badly in here. Overall, with the exception of Lucid, I don't think any of the shades really perform badly in here. I feel like it's a little bit harder to make full cohesive looks out of this unless you want to use shimmers in the crease, which isn't bad. Like, you can do that, but I just don't like how that looks on me personally. And I would have loved like at least one of these darker purple shades over here to be a matte, so you could kind of create those looks. So overall, thank you, Mom, for letting me use this. Packaging, beautiful. Shadows, disappointing. Two more things left. So first of all, I love me a good indie brand palette, especially something cutesy like this. So this is from OMFG Cosmetics. It's called the Sugar and Sweets palette, and I shared this on my Instagram stories when I got it. I think that this is adorable as a concept. Cute little bust, cute little characters. I die for this aesthetic. The inside color scheme looked like this. I did change mine up because it's magnetic, so you can kind of pop out shades. And I wanted to use this palette to house my singles and kind of create my own color scheme because I didn't like the shadows that were inside of it. But I was really excited about this one. I was excited to test out a new pastel color scheme. I did do a look with the Sugar and Sweets palette on my Instagram, and I think the look looked cute on camera. And I filmed a video with the look on, so I don't think it necessarily looked bad on camera. The pastels were honestly like everything I don't like about pastel shades. I had a lot of high hopes for the formula, but honestly, the mattes were just really chalky, very unpigmented, and just not great. So I ended up pretty much popping out all the original shades from the palette and putting all my singles in here. And now I love the color scheme. I think this is adorable. I would have loved for the shadows in here to be like really up to par because I really wanted a good pastel indie brand palette to recommend. But yeah, it was not good. So I just wanted to share that because I did post the look on Instagram and I had a lot of people asking me like, oh my god, is the palette good? I want to buy it. I can't recommend it. I would love for them to just offer this palette empty alone so you can kind of get this and then put your singles in here because I think this is adorable. And I would love for more magnetic palettes like this rather than just like empty magnetic spaces. But unfortunately the original palette was not that great. Alright, and then finally I've been working on the indie brand spotlight video for Nabla for a bit, so that should be coming at some point. But I wanted to review really quickly the Nabla Skin Glazing collection because they have this really beautiful, very visually appealing line of cheek products, and I have mixed feelings about each of these types of things. So there's the bronzers, which I've talked about quite a bit on my channel already. There's the skin glazing highlighters, and then there's the skin glazing. These are also technically highlighters, but they're pink, so they have these like kind of shimmery blushes. These three products all have very similar formulas, which is not a good thing because I don't think blushes, bronzers, and highlighters should have the same formula. Like, I look for different things between each of those products. So I think the formula works really well for the bronzers because it's a very stiff formula, doesn't have a lot of powdery kick-up. It's not aggressively pigmented, so I feel like this is very easy to work with, and it looks very natural on the skin. I love the bronzers. My shade is Ambra. It's very buildable, not super pigmented, and I think that's a good thing for the bronzers. The highlighters and blushes, honestly, I was very excited about because it seemed kind of like an Amrezy type formula where it's like baked gelée, not very powdery, and very nice and metallic and glowy without being unnatural looking. Unfortunately, something about these just didn't do it for me. I think the blush is actually okay. It is more metallic than I generally like shimmery blushes to be, so it was a little bit harder to blend out. But I do think it can be pretty, especially if you kind of work to blend it out and do kind of like a blush draping technique. But the highlighter, which I was most excited about, is not my favorite on the cheekbones. It does have the kind of similar like non-powdery formula that the Amrezy highlighter does, but it's just a little bit like dry in my opinion, so it looked kind of unnatural on the cheekbones once I applied it. No matter how much I kind of did the circular blending motion, I don't feel like it really melted into the cheekbones at all and just kind of sat there. Very similar formula between all three of these, but I think it works best for the bronzers and least well for the highlighters. So those are all the new releases I want to review in today's video. Overall, I would say the biggest hit was the Colourpop Sunflower palette and the Oden's Alva 2 collection. But yeah, it was an eyeshadow heavy month. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Thank you again to Shop Tagger for sponsoring today's video. Subscribe, I guess. Ring the bell if you want to be Dew Fairy. By the way, I don't remember if I've mentioned this, but no repeats for Dew Fairy. So if you've already been Dew Fairy, that's a title for life. You are forever Dew Fairy. You don't get to be like double Dew Fairy or anything. Follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, and if you've made it to the very end of this video, have a really wonderful day. Take care of yourself. I love you. Bye.
Hey guys, it's Julia. So I'm not coming out with any new merch collections for the rest of the year, but this year for holiday merch I instead wanted to bring back your fave collection from last year. So the Spooky Flower Child merch is back in the merch store. This is the dead rose with the skeleton hand, and it's one of my favorite designs ever, so that is available once again as a seasonal design. If you want to get it by Halloween, order during September and it'll get there in mid-October. I have also had some requests to add more inexpensive merch options for those of you who either don't want to buy a clothing piece or want something more affordable, and one of the most requested items were mugs. So I just dropped coffee mugs with the Nature's Anatomy and Flower Child designs in the merch store as well, and those will be permanent. Thank you in advance to anyone who chooses to support, and I hope you enjoy. Love you, BB.